In Lesson 6.3, we're going to look at percents that are greater than 100% or less than 1%. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite percents that are greater than 100% first. So we're going to take 140% and write it as a decimal and as a fraction. So we are going from a percent to a decimal, which is backwards alphabetical order, so we're going to go to the left. So your decimal point is always at the end of your number if you don't see it. We're always going to move it 2 places, and we're going to move it to the left. So I'm going to go 1, 2, oops, 1, 2, and it's going to become 1.4. So I can either do it just by moving the percent, and that's writing it moving the decimal point, so it's writing it as a decimal. Now they also want me to write it as a fraction, so I'm not done. I know the percent. What's the definition of percent? It means out of 100. So I put my percent over 100, and I should reduce that. So 140 and 100, first I can divide both by 10, so it just knocks off the 0. So now I have 14 over 10, and I can divide each of those by 2, whoops, and I get 7 over 5, or 5 goes into 7 once with 2 out of 5 left over. So 140% equals 1.4 in decimal form and 1 2/5 in fraction form. Okay, so you will get either a mixed number or a number with a decimal point in it greater than 1 if your percent started out being more than 100%. Because it's 100% is a whole, so you're going to wind up with an answer that's more than 1 whole. Now what about if our percents are really small? So if our percents are less than 1%, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to write it as a decimal and as a fraction. So again, we're going from percent to decimal, which is backwards alphabetical order. So we're going to move 2 places to the left. And it already has a decimal point, so take this decimal point and go 1, 2 to the left. Fill in any missing spaces with zeros. So I'm going to wind up with 0.0075. So that's writing it as a decimal. And now I also have to do it as a fraction. So again, the definition of percent means put it over 100. Now, you can't have a decimal within a fraction. So you're going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 100 to get a whole numbered numerator. And I picked 100 because I needed to move it 2 places. And 100 will do that. So 0.75 times 100 is 75. And 100 times 100 is 10,000. But now you need to simplify this. Always simplify your fractions. And I look at this and I think of money, so I know that 25 is going to go into both of these. 75 divided by 25 is 3. And 25 goes into 100 4 times, but there's 2 extra zeros, so it's going to be over 400. So 0.75% equals 0.0075 in decimal form and 3 over 400 in fraction form. Okay, so it's still moving your decimal point 2 places, either to the right or to the left. In this case, it's going to be to the left because they already give you the percent. They want you to turn it into a decimal. And then for fractions, you just need to put it over 100 and then simplify. So pause the video and fill that in before trying the quick check. In quick check 1, you have a big percent. They want you to write it as a decimal and a fraction, so make sure you give 2 answers. And in quick check 2, you have a really small percent, but again, they want 2 answers, a decimal and a fraction. So pause the video and try those quick checks before moving on to the next part. And In the next part, we're going to take mixed numbers and write them as percent. Now they're showing you how to punch these in on a calculator. So, if you're going to take a mixed number and punch it into a calculator, you have to look at it as a fraction or a whole number, a whole number plus a fraction. And that's how you punch mixed numbers into a calculator. So 4 2/3, you would punch in 4 plus 2 divided by 3, hit the equal sign, and you should get 4 point, a bunch of 6's, and a 7 at the end. And there's not really a 7 at the end there, it's just that your calculator is going to round that last 6 up to a 7. So if we want to turn this into a percent now, to go from decimal to percent, that's alphabetical order, so I'm going to go to the right. So 2 places to the right, and it's 466.67%. Move 2 places to the right. So the number of seats in the stadium is 466.67% of the number of seats in the auditorium, which makes sense. A stadium would be much bigger than an auditorium, so it's going to hold a lot more seats. And example 4, an animal shelter has 4 beagles available for adoption. I'm just changing my colors. There are 481 other dogs for adoption that are not beagles. About what percentage of the dogs are beagles? So, if there are 481 other dogs and 4 beagles, if we want to figure out the total, hold on, let's scroll. I'm not going to have room for that. Okay, sorry. 481 other dogs and 4 beagles. So I'm going to add those two numbers together because that's going to give me my total dogs. Okay? So what percentage are beagles? Well, percent is always going to be what you want, which is beagles, over the total. In this case, we have 4 beagles, and the total is 485. And now they want you to divide this, so you'll do 4 divided by 485, and they're telling you to use a calculator. If you do that, you get a really long decimal here, 0.008247 and we're going to write this as a percent. So if we're going decimal to percent, that's correct alphabetical order, so we're going to go to the right, 1, 2, so it becomes 0.82474%. It says to round it, so it's about 0.8%, because after the 8 comes a 2, and the 2 is not going to round that 8 up to a 9, it's going to keep it as an 8. So let's look at the choices. 0.8, it's not 8. Here you go, here's 0.8%. So the correct answer is choice B. Alright, so pause the video and fill that in before moving on to the quick checks. In quick check 3, you're going to run 2 4/5 of the distance you ran yesterday. Write this number as a percent. So remember, first you're going to take the 4/5 and you're going to turn that into a decimal, and then you're going to add the 2 together. Then write that as a percent. So you're going to first turn it into a, you're first going to turn it into a decimal and then turn it into a percent. So just move your decimal point in the correct direction. Idaho has 2 members in the U.S. House of Representatives, and there are a total, so this already is your total. What percent of the representatives are from Idaho? So you're going to set up a fraction and then turn it into a percent. Okay, so you're going to go from a fraction to a decimal to a percent in this one. So model those after examples 3 and 4. Work those quick checks, and we'll check your work in class.